Welcome to Digital Health Report from Stockholm.
Today we have Professor Mark Smith, who is a professor at the Department of Electronic Systems at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Mark's research is focused on information and communication technologies that shape up the future IT products. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark, as we talked before, I already know you are quite passionate about digital health. And for you, digital health is all about empowering patients.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it is important?
Well, my view of the future with respect to digital health is one of really empowering people, really empowering them to be able to make decisions and really be able to understand what they really want to achieve when they look at their own personal health status. So I think that in general, what people are looking for is they want to really understand any sort of physiological processes that have to do with their health and well-being. So what they're looking for are things like assurance. They want to know that things that are happening to them are right, are correct. They're looking for resources. They're looking for information. Everybody experiences health problems. Everybody is in the same situation many times, and they want to be able to get information from others who have experienced the same thing. They want to know as they go through life what is happening to them, what is happening to their family members, people they care about, individuals around them, get resources that can help them make decisions or life choices. These are the sorts of things that they want. So that's what really turns me on when I look at this area is what are the kinds of products that are going to help people do that?
Great.
Mark, do you see any risks regarding measuring and storing health data?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of risks in this. So I've done a lot of working with consumer products and looking at the way that people use technology. One of the interesting things about this whole field that makes it different from most other consumer-oriented IT devices is that it's connecting to your body. It connects to biosignals. And this now means diversity. This means a lot of different, well, you don't hook things to yourself the same way from different people to different people. So the risks in measurement are how do I attach things that sense things from my body in a repeatable, highly precise way? That's one of the big questions. How are customers going to know that things have been attached right, that the data that they're measuring is correct, that they are actually seeing something that makes sense? That's one of them. The second thing is interpreting the data. So most physiological data, sort of, you can think of like medical instrumentation when you see pictures of people in health centers or in hospitals hooked up to lots of equipment. Well, clearly we're going to have to do something to make that a lot more mobile. But also, the data that comes off is for clinicians. Great. Okay, so how do I now take that data and turn it into something for consumers? In other words, how do I make it have meaning? How do I make it have something that is going to reassure them, that is giving them the kind of information they're looking for? So that's one of the other big challenges, is how do I measure it? How do I measure it repeatably? And how do I make it understandable? Those are the big hurdles that we have to do.
So this sounds as a very cross-disciplinary challenge. That means that to address this challenge within digital health, we need completely new set of young professionals.
Yep.
So what is your view? Will be able education system to bring those, and how?
So that's what I study the most. Because in the world of IT product development, I see IT products slowly but surely broadening. So intellectual property and other kinds of new business area and new business spaces are bringing in, we're starting to see elements that are not traditionally associated with IT devices. So things like smartphones, tablets, those are all cool and everything, but what we're really going to start seeing is wildly different areas coming to the marketplace. We're going to see smart clothing, we're going to see smart buildings, we're going to see, of course, things like smart vehicles, self-driving cars, and that's just the beginning. We're going to see everything going on way beyond that. IT in itself is going to be an enabling technology, not just the end-all, be-all of these things. So how do you design those? How do you make those? A computer engineer, an electrical engineer, a computer scientist, these guys by themselves have to be contributors, but they're not going to be the sole inventors. They're not going to be the sole people coming up with these new ideas, these new patents, these new products. They have to work in conjunction with artists, they have to work with designers, they have to work with architects, they have to work with people that have non-engineering, extremely creative skills and very, very broad contributors. All right, how do I do it? How do I teach my engineers to be able to do that? What are the processes? What are the methodologies? Right now, those are not in the textbooks, and especially when looking at it from an engineering viewpoint, not just from a design viewpoint. So I spend a lot of time observing and looking and figuring out what are these methodologies so that technical professionals can work with creative individuals to design these products. To do that, I need interdisciplinary courses. I need to be able to figure out how do you design those, how do you run them. I need very, very, very applied learning spaces. I need learning spaces where I can bring in these very diverse contributors from very different schools, very different departments. I need to not just cross department lines, I've got to cross university lines. Bring them into this applied space and then expose them to the methods where they can then contribute together. So I need things that start to look like maker spaces, if you will. I need to make them completely open and very, very, how shall I say, only centric to the problem. The people in the space can't worry about what is the background of these other people, what other schools that they came from. Things like that just don't matter. It's really how do we exchange ideas and then how do we try them in a very, extemporaneous way. So almost all of my classes have some element of that in them.
Cross-disciplinarity.
Yeah. So universities have to be willing to experiment with courses like this. They have to have the courage to be able to allow these departmental boundaries to be broken down a little bit. They have to be able to be patient for the results, because when we're dealing with these kinds of new educational paradigms, well, you're looking at a whole generation of students before you see the outcome. You're not going to see it in one quarter or in one semester. You're going to have to wait several years. So you have to be patient, you have to be daring, and most of all, you have to be accepting.
Great.
With that explosion of digital health, what are the risks that we might expect?
You mean from a societal viewpoint or from a consumer viewpoint?
Up
or
to you. You can choose what the risks that represent the huge challenge to you.
Well, the big risks for me in this space, as always, because now what we're doing is we are sensing extremely personal data. We are bringing technology ever closer to the person. So now all of a sudden I'm looking at data that is part of, well, it is certainly a good example of privacy of self. So I would say the biggest risk is, how do I control the data? How do I determine who I'm going to share it with? How do I determine, this goes beyond figuring out what it means. I'm assuming I've gotten to that point. But now the big question is how do I share it with the right people, in the right situation, in the right place? How can I trust that the person who's looking at my data is not going to then turn around and misuse it? I think the big question here is, and this is something that we're already seeing in the big data environment that we now live in, is who is the customer of these devices and who is the user of these devices? They're not necessarily the same. And that, to me, is the biggest risk. I want to make sure that the customer and the user are the same, and that instead the user is not just a source of data and the real customer is the one who wants to buy and use that for purposes not necessarily in the best interest of the person who generated the data. That, to me, is the biggest risk.
So data question.
Yes.
And if just allow us to dream a bit, what is the future of digital health? Just something that you're really dreaming about.
Okay, so what I think of it is enhancing the adventure of life. That's probably the best way that I would describe it. If I really have that much information that I can understand, that is a product of how my body is functioning, how my body responds to external forces in life, everything from the kind of food that I eat, to the kind of environment that I'm in, to the kind of pathogens that I'm exposed to the kinds of, stressful situations or joyous situations, whatever they are. If I really now have a new form of data coming that I can really understand, now think of the power I've got. Think how I can shape what I do. Think about the lifestyle choices that I can make, the dietary choices I can make, the environment and career choices that I can make. Life is already a big adventure, but now what I can do is I can really start thinking about what are the trade-offs between my life's choices and this language that my body is trying to tell me. And I can choose to listen to it, I can choose to ignore it, or I can be somewhere in between. But what that does is that gives me a lot more control of how I want to spend my living time.
So, Mark, it's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
That was very wonderful to have you here. You had very deep insights on different topics, which is really very interesting to a wide range of audience. Yeah. So we'd like to thank you again for joining us today, and see you in Digital Health Days.
Yes, so September we are coming. See you.